Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Camden Haven Anglican Church drill down in the lockdown, but we hope not too much longer in the lockdown. My name's Nathan Killick, and this is Camden Haven Anglican Church drill down, which is where we take the passage or the topic looked at on the previous Sunday and we drill down to it and think a little bit more about it, address any questions you've got and any comments you've raised, and I try to fill in the bits that I left out of the sermon, that sort of thing. Now, one of the things is, I'm going to say you can watch the last service on our webpage. And all I need to do to show you that is do this, I think. Let me just jump to here. Oh, you know what? I haven't opened that up. Let me just open that up because I do want to show it to you. Let's go to... Sorry, I should have had all that organised. Well, while I do that, I'll tell you that I'm coming to you a little earlier than normal. And the reason that I'm coming to you a little earlier than normal, I should say, is that I have a meeting tonight, and it's one of those times when I have to be in two places at the same time. But let me just show you this one. You can see there's our YouTube page, and you can go back to services previously, and you can see that we're doing that right now, conspiracy theories. And you can go back and have a look there. There is our 10 a.m. service from last week and our 8 a.m. as well. There's all previous services as well, a whole bunch of stuff going on there. We've had lots of fun, so you can check those out, and I'll pop back to there. So it's good to be with you today, and I don't know if you're joining, so I'll just check to see if anybody's on while I give some time for this to happen. These are things I should have clicked on before, shouldn't I? But anyway, that's the way it goes. And let's see how we're going. Pop that up there. Oh, goodness, there's my mum. Hello, mum. It's good to see you. Well, it's good to see you typing there anyway. I've got to keep checking that to see who's there. So, to get my head in gear, like I said before, normally I'd be coming to you at about 7:30 in the evening, but today it is a bit earlier because I have a meeting tonight, and that meeting means that I can't be in two places at once, which is a shame, but the good thing is I'm able to do it when we're digital. Instead of looking at a particular passage today, what we're going to think about is how Christians ought to respond to various controversial matters. And I suppose there's plenty of controversial matters that we could have chosen, but the one that we've chosen three last week, this week, and next week at church. We're going to be looking at end times. Are we in the end times? What might make us feel like we are? What does the Bible have to say? That's going to be next week. The following week, we're going to think about government, and that's a really important issue at the moment. I think that the whole government side of things and how Christians are to respond to government is what we're going to be looking at the week after. But today, we are looking at conspiracy theories, how Christians ought to respond to conspiracy theories. And if I had some sound effect, it would come dum, dum, da, that sort of thing. But I don't have one of those. I've just given you a verbal one anyway. Conspiracy theories. I don't know if you would consider yourself as somebody who believes conspiracy theories or is caught up in conspiracy theories, or if you believe what others would call a conspiracy theory and you think, I think it's true, it's not merely conspiracy. One of the problems that I had on Sunday, and that I will have again today, is that the term conspiracy theory has a sort of negative connotation to it, and I don't want to use that term in a negative way today. I'm going to try to use it in a neutral way, and I really don't think that's possible completely. So I need you to do a bit of work when I say those words. Just take it neutrally and not as a term of derision or anything like that. It's simply a theory that tries to explain events that are happening as the reason they are happening is some conspiracy is going on. So that's all I want to say when it comes to that. So, conspiracy theories, what are they? Conspiracy theories are generally defined as a belief that some covert but influential organisation or group of people is responsible for some harmful event. Someone is pulling the strings behind the scenes. It's for their own benefit, and I am being affected by it. I'm feeling powerless. And the more skin we have in the game, so to speak, the more likely a theory like that will be attractive to us, and we will grip onto it. And so there is some sense that, well, there's a whole bunch of theories out there, so many, but we're not really impacted by all of them. The ones that we're impacted by are the ones that are affecting us more directly. And I think that's certainly the case when it comes to the present pandemic. So because this is affecting us so tremendously in so many ways, it's more likely, therefore, that any conspiracy theories surrounding it will be affecting us, and they will be attractive to us. So again, I'm not saying that any of these theories is wrong or you shouldn't believe it or whatever. I can tell you what I think a bit later on. At the moment, I'm just talking about how Christians ought to respond to these theories and respond to the times in general. So I'm going to keep looking at who's on there. Here we go. We got believing in Bigfoot. Oh, that's Callum's put up there, Bigfoot. Bigfoot's not so much a conspiracy theory because there is not some covert organisation or group behind the scenes trying to benefit from there being some sort of Bigfoot animal or mammal or whatever you want to call it. But Bigfoot, how would you categorise the Bigfoot? It's really, I suppose it's just a controversy rather than a conspiracy. So you may really feel that there are legitimate reasons to believe there is a Bigfoot or a Yeti or a Yowie or whatever it might be. I think there's one in Penrith, isn't there? About the Black Panther roaming around in the Blue Mountains or something like that. There's been sightings of it. Is it true? Is it not true? That sort of thing. So I think, Callum, I would put believing in Bigfoot as slightly different to a conspiracy theory. Maybe another sort of controversy or something like that might be, is Elvis alive? Did he really die, or did he fake his death? That sort of thing. So no one's really benefiting from that, and we're not being harmed by it. But when it comes to a pandemic, there can be people who feel, there is some organisation behind this, whether it's a group of governments or the Illuminati or the Rothschilds or family or whatever it might be, that they are benefiting from our disadvantage, that sort of thing. So that's more of what I mean a conspiracy theory to be. And you know that in the recent, I should say, pandemic has given rise to a lot of conspiracy theories. So I even received a text message just a little while ago telling me that the vaccine, one of the new technology vaccines that is fighting the coronavirus was actually changing the DNA of people. And so if you take that, your DNA will be changed. There has been things that say that it's trying to remove the God gene. If there was such a thing as a God gene, it's trying to remove that. It's putting into you that sort of thing. It's the mark of the beast, all of that sort of stuff. That is a conspiracy theory because there is someone behind all of that trying to make money from you or make money from a downturn in world economics or something like that. That would be more so a conspiracy type of thing. And so the temperature in the room when you discuss these sorts of things does increase quite quickly, doesn't it? Because people who are genuinely affected. And if you were to look at our YouTube page and see the comments on the service last week, you would see that we've really touched a raw nerve. Now, I've had to respond to a lot of those comments, and I feel a sense that I'm trying to put into practice what I'm about to talk to you about today. And it's not easy. It's really hard. Sometimes people come out quite aggressively, and I think that has been the case in this one. And how do I respond? Well, I need to be careful that I don't respond aggressively, or I don't respond sort of in a clever, sort of smug sort of way. Either of those I'm guilty of and could easily do. So that's our challenge. What does it look like to live as a Christian in the midst of conspiracy theories? I recognise that people have got a right to think what they want to think, and but we don't have a right to treat people the way we want to treat people. We don't have that right in society. Neither do we have that right when it comes to being Christians. God wants us to love one another, and we need to work out what love will mean when we do that. Now, I want to bring up a term now, a term that you may or may not have heard of, but it's a term that I think we need to wrestle with before we can continue and talk about this. The term is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias. I don't know if you've heard of that term or if you know what it means. It's quite probable that you do and you have heard of it. Confirmation bias means that it doesn't take much to convince us of what we're already convinced of. It doesn't take much to convince us of what we're already convinced of. So let me read one of the things. It says that it's also known as my side bias. My side. It is the tendency of people, it is the tendency to search for, interpret, favour and recall information in a way that confirms or supports one's prior beliefs or values. Now, did that make sense? Did that come out okay? I don't know. It really, the sense of when we hear information we agree with, it resonates with us and makes us feel comfortable. When we hear information that we don't agree with, it doesn't resonate with us and it makes us feel uncomfortable. Sometimes that information coming to us is false, and so it's right that we feel uncomfortable and reject it. But sometimes that information coming to us is true, and unfortunately we still reject it because it's making us feel uncomfortable, because it's different to what we think. Now, there is plenty of examples of this in our lives, and I want to talk a little bit about that in a moment. But what basically happens is when we hear something we agree with, when we hear information, I should say, that backs up that which we agree with, we are highly unlikely to scrutinize that information because it tells us what we already believe. Now, if it's not true and it challenges what we believe, but we believe it because we already believe the idea prior to it, then we've got a problem. I want to give you an example in a minute, so give me a chance to explain what I'm talking about. What we can do is when we have a particular position on a matter, and when we're presented with information that opposes what we think, what we can then do is begin to mine, that is, look for, on websites or whatever it might be, look for information that actually backs us up. And that brings us more comfort. We feel, right, there's other people who believe it, that's good, that's information to back me up. But you and I know that everything that we look at on the internet is not necessarily true. A bunch of it is just misguided misinformation. So we need to be really careful. And one of the things that happens is that if we do this enough, we begin to become so entrenched in our position that really it's impenetrable. And an impenetrable position is a really dangerous thing, because if you're wrong, you will not listen. You do not want to feel that discomfort. I think we need to be open-minded, open enough and brave enough to be able to allow those things that we are convinced of to be challenged. and that's at every level of life. So let me give you an example of something that can come along that's not true, that strengthens us in our position, and even though our position might be right or wrong, that is not a helpful bit. So, for example, we recently were looking at the crossing of the Red Sea, weren't we, when we were going through Exodus? And in 2014, there was an article that came out in one online production that said that some underwater archaeologists had been diving in the Red Sea in Egypt and had found chariot wheels and bones of hundreds of people, chariot wheels and all sorts of things. That went out and it was promoted, and a whole lot of Christians saw it, and they saw that thing and they said, finally we have absolute proof that the Bible's story of the Exodus is true. That is, going through the Red Sea and the waters coming in. That just went everywhere. And people took it really fast because it came from the internet. It looked real. They wanted it to be real because we wanted to have a strengthening of our position when it came to that story. But the fact is that was an untrue story. It was actually a satire. When you traced back to the beginning of it, it was actually just a joke. And yet millions, hundreds of thousands, I don't know, I didn't count them all, believers took that story very quickly because it confirmed their bias. It confirmed their previously held belief, and so they were less likely to investigate it and critique it. And they just took it on board. And now it's sort of sensitive. It's embarrassing, though, when you take that on board and then you use that as proof that the Bible is true, and that's pointed out to be not true. Then your own belief framework is challenged. So why am I talking about all this? I'm just saying that we as humans begin to believe things, and it's very uncomfortable when things come along that challenge that belief, and yet we need to allow that to happen. It is the harder road. It is not the easier road. It is the harder road. And so when a conspiracy theory comes along, it might be very easy for someone who believes sort of the mainline thing to say to that conspiracy theory, you're not true, I don't believe you, that sort of thing, and just to not even investigate it. Other way around, it's very easy, therefore, for somebody who believes a conspiracy theory to be able to break out of it, because anything that comes along will make them uncomfortable, and they will then mine the internet or whatever to find things to back them up to make them feel better again. So that's a bunch of stuff. So I suppose what I'm doing is encouraging all of us to increase our self-awareness and say, they talk all these movies talking about machines becoming self-aware and overtaking us. Well, most of us need to become self-aware, first of all, and need to work much more on that. So I'm really encouraging us to feel some sense of self-awareness. Now, I'm sorry if I keep on talking about this, but I want to keep moving it in closer and closer to our Christian position. So when a idea comes along, whatever it might be, that challenges yours and challenges our confirmation bias, we feel uncomfortable, but we need to be able to say, no, I'm going to listen to this. But when it comes to Christians, there is generally a tendency, I should say, of Christians to do this with Bible stuff as well. So I want to mention to you a bunch of Bible issues that you may hold a position on and yet feel very uncomfortable when you're challenged in those issues. So let me do a couple of them. The classic one is the creation. So there are Christians who hold a whole varying degree of positions on creation. They all say that God created the world, but some say no, it must have been in 6 literal days, 6 literal 24-hour periods. Some say, well, no, it was in 6 stages. Some say it wasn't in 6 days or 6 stages. Genesis just is a picture language of what went on. Some will believe in evolution. Some say that that's the way God did it. All those sorts of things. So that's a classic one, and that's actually been quite a damaging one to the Christian church, I think, because some people say, well, no, the Bible says, let me take the 6-day one, I believe that God did it in 6 literal 24-hour periods, and you're saying something else, so now I am suspicious of you because you're making me feel uncomfortable, and you're making me feel uncomfortable about the Bible. And then they start talking about slippery slopes and all that sort of thing. Oh, well, if you don't take it there, suddenly you'll deny Jesus. Well, actually, none of that's true. That's all confirmation bias working, and we need to work hard to come out of that. Other issues are things like how the flood, did the flood really happen? If the flood really did happen, what was the extent of the flood? Was it a local flood or was it a global flood? It's interesting to say that if it was a local flood or a global flood, it doesn't really affect the meaning of the story. But might have scientists say, well, actually there is no evidence around the world of there being a global flood as the evidence has been claimed. Some say that. It's uncomfortable. We begin to go, what? What happens there? And it's even happened, It's even happened as we've been talking about the events of the Exodus. So one of the things I mentioned, and I tried to do it a few weeks ago, I tried to do it very gently and very carefully just to create a bit of a scenario for us to think through. But what happened was people heard, some, like 1 or 2, so it's all right. Those 1 or 2 are important, but some people heard what I said and said, oh, he doesn't believe, that's uncomfortable to me, I'm not watching anymore. Do you see what that is? That's confirmation bias at work, not genuine inquiry and thinking through things. And it's all right, we're into the truth, and the truth is strong enough. We want to be able to understand it. So if you're trying to scratch your head and think, what did he say back then? It was when I was talking about the crossing of the Red Sea and wondering if it was possible that there was, sort of saying that, it could be possible that, let's check something here. It could be possible that the whole Red Sea event was an illustration or a metaphor as the waters came together of judgment and the waters part for the same way that the waters parted in Genesis 1 and dry land appeared. And what happened in the flood? The waters came together and there was judgment. Here is a picture of judgment, that sort of thing. Now, I wasn't saying I didn't believe that the crossing of the Red Sea happened. I'm just saying, what does it matter? Whether it was a picture or whether it actually happened, the point is still the same. God is the rescuer, or Yahweh is the rescuer and redeemer of his people. A whole bunch of other things, isn't there? What about Jonah? Was Jonah true? Actually, if Callum's still watching, and I don't know if he is or not, he likes Jonah, I know that. So is Jonah a true story? Or is it a truth story? If Jonah, did Jonah actually, was there actually a man who got eaten by a whale and was spewed up and preached, that sort of thing? Or is it a parable for us? Now, I'm not saying either, so don't freak out. Don't freak out. It's all right. I have an opinion on it, but I'm not saying it here. But imagine it was just a parable. What difference would that make to the teaching? That's a question we've got to ask. I think it would make no difference to it. And we ought not get caught up in some of those things because of our confirmation bias. What about baptism? Infant baptism? Now we just hear that. Oh no, these people who are in infant baptism are compromising themselves, that sort of thing. All that. And the other way around. The return of Jesus will be premillennial, postmillennial, amillennial, or as my friend John Chapman used to say, pan-millennial, everything will pan out in the end, that sort of thing. What I suppose I am talking about is saying we as Christians in particular need to be wary that we're not more committed to our preferences than to what the Bible says. And if we're challenged by something that by Bible teaching, or we're challenged about something we believe in the Bible, and we're not willing to genuinely investigate it or think it through, or we dismiss it too quickly, we might not be holding on to it because it is the truth, but because simply it makes us comfortable. It's our confirmation bias at work. Well, that was a bunch of stuff to say, wasn't there? I spoke to you for 25 minutes on confirmation bias, and the reason that I had to talk to you about that is because when it comes to... who else is there? Let's see. Callum says, Jonah being a true story, as he is then referenced in 2 Kings. Okay, in my opinion, but open. Yeah. Oh, Simon Abramovich is on as well. Thank you. It's good to be open, think through what's the implications. Okay, there he is, turns up in 2 Kings. What's the story there? That sort of thing. All right, well, back to conspiracy theories. I think we just need to be realistic that all of these things, this confirmation bias affects us, and we need to battle it a little bit if we're going to find truth. And my guess is that none of us really want to change our mind about things. It's very difficult for us to have to say, I was wrong, and that sounds more right. Definitely when we get more deeply entrenched in a particular theory, it's very difficult to find our way out. If we get too comfortable in our own beliefs and our shield is impenetrable, then we never really learn, and we never really love either. So we should not be fearful to seek the truth, because truth is good for faith, and we want to believe what is true. So when it comes to conspiracy theories, it's interesting that if you don't believe what a conspiracy theory, what a person who brings a conspiracy theory to you, the problem is the more entrenched they are in that conspiracy theory, the more your unbelief or questioning of them will actually strengthen their argument in their mind, but not in reality. So because you don't believe, then you are one who is caught up. You are one who's been duped. You are one who has been, tricked by the whole thing. And so you become a proof of their conspiracy theory being true. Now, think about that for a while. That actually makes almost zero sense. It's not a strong enough... I don't even know how to explain that. It's really tricky, isn't it, to think that through. I suppose, let me put it this way. You can't really base or back up your theory based on someone's disagreement with it and hit their disagreement with it alone. You need to investigate their disagreement, the reasons for their disagreement, and if those reasons don't stack up, then it becomes a reason for you to believe. But their disagreement with it is not enough to make that sort of decision. So it cannot be a backing up for your point. So on Sunday, I really had 3 points that talked about how we as Christians are to respond to that. We talked about us being made in the image of God and to treat each other as image bearers. The second point was the importance of humility, an attitude of humility, and so that we're able to actually think, well, I might be wrong about this thing I'm talking to you about, so let me be humble about that. And the third point was peace, that we have the goal of peace, image bearers, humility, and peace. Now, I don't want to go through those 3 things today. I just want to look at that first one, because I think that first one is the most powerful one, because it sort of really grounds, and it's the foundation of all that comes from it. The Bible says that we are in the image of God. So what I want to do is I want to have a look at that. And let's see, that's Colossians. I don't want Colossians. I want... There we go. And let's pop up there. Hello, there I am in the corner. Amazing, isn't it? What I want to do is just to point out here, we have right there in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26, here we have, and then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so they may rule and over the creatures among the ground. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them male and female. He created them. So I'm going to highlight that, and that's when think about that for a moment. So let me just raise that up a bit so you can see that. So first of all, image, what does it mean to be in the image of God? Well, it begins to speak here, doesn't it, about what that image means. Interesting to note that in ancient times, an image was placed in a temple. So the temple was built, and then the image of the God that temple was built for or to was placed in the temple. Fair enough. Here we have the word image being used. So in the first century reader, it would have been starting to ring some bells. Image, I know image. There's images, all sorts of images of gods and things like that. But here, people are the image that God places in Eden. So it's a really strong point to see Eden as God making this place for him to dwell, and he places his image in Eden, in this dwelling place, and his image is live people, real live people. And so you can see there, if we go back to that, and I pop that on again, you can see there that what the image is to do, that is us, what we are to do, is what? We are to do what God does. And that is, let's have a look, so that they may rule. I wonder if I can do that. Yes, I can. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, birds of the air, the birds of the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over the creatures of the ground, etc. So ruling is part of what it means to be in the image of God. So that's partly what it is. We are in the image of God. And how is that image shown in the world? Well, we are to rule. We are just like God, and we rule the world. The other thing I would want to say is that the image of God is not only ruling, but relating as well. So we relate on a whole nother level. I mean, other things relate. My dog's here somewhere. No, she's gone. She's gone out the door. She relates, monkeys relate, gorillas relate, fish. There's all this levels of relationship going on, but none relate in the way that people relate and relate to the world. There's that rulership relating as well. So there we go. We've got our first occurrence of the word image, and there it is, ruling and relating, I want to suggest there. So image does not merely mean shape. So we are not, image is not, your body image. You're worried about the shape of your body, whether it's big and fat or little and skinny or tall or short or whatever it might be. You have a good or bad body image, how you see yourself, or how you see your shape, really. And but I don't think that's what it's saying. It's not saying that. So God made some people who look just like him. God has 10 fingers, but they're just really, really big, and a big head, giant head, however big body, whatever. No, or maybe he's tiny. I don't know. Maybe he's this big, and he's got arms and legs. Who knows? But that's not what he's talking about when it talks about image. Image is rather in that sense of how we rule and how we relate, and we'll see a little bit more of that as we go on. It's interesting, though, that in chapter 5, so let's look at chapter 5. Let's go back up here. Remember this, and we'll go to chapter 5 because I want to show you something there. 5 and enter. Oops, I've gone to 15. Goodness, that's not where we wanted to go to. That's because my keyboard timed out in terms of its Bluetooth settings. And let's see. Let's have a look at chapter 5 and verse 3. When Adam had lived 130 years, he had a son in his own likeness, in his own image, and named him Seth. So here we've got this idea of image created them, image continued. So here is God, God creating people in his image, and then this image is being retained and passed on to those who follow on. Now, then we want to go to Genesis chapter 9. And what we're going to look at is verse 6. Oops, no, don't do that. Uh-oh. Back there. So this is after the flood, and when all the people have... when Noah and his family have come off, the waters have gone down, that sort of thing. And God says in verse 6 there, whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed. Why? For in the image of God has God made mankind. So the image remains, even though sin has come into the world, the image remains. And what is being said here is that to take the life of a person is different to taking the life of an animal. Why? Because persons are in the image of God. There's a different way of thinking. Now my dog's come back. It's all right. You go outside, Luce. I don't know why I talk to her. She's going deaf. So we can see that when it comes to the whole idea of image. The next spot where image turns up, I'm sure you know this. Come on, you must know this. Exodus 20, doesn't it? What happens in Exodus 20? Well, you shall not make for yourselves an image. Let's do that. So here's something I want to float with you and think through as we come to this sort of stuff. God says in the Ten Commandments, you shall not make an image, and that is, you shall not make an image as a way to worship him. That's what's going on there. So remember the story of the golden calf. They made an image of a calf, and they said, this is your God. So I want to float this idea. I haven't really read this before, but I'll check it out anyway with you. I'm experimenting on you. Is that God said don't make an image, not just because an image is stupid, but because there is already an image. And the image is people, male and female. And when humans see themselves in the image of God, their humanity is enhanced and their worship is true. They're heading towards true worship. Now let me keep unpacking this. If we worship God by using other images, as they did there with the golden calf in chapters 32 of Exodus, we are actually dehumanizing ourselves, and that's part of the reason that God says don't use images. Psalm 115 says those who worship idols and images will become like them. You are what you worship. You know, they say you are what you eat. This is saying you are what you worship. So being in the image of God is to see that we are truly human. We are the objects. That's the wrong word. We are the enablers. We are the, I'm not sure of the real word there, where somebody might create an image and worship it and use it to worship God. God says, no, that's no good. But where we worship God as God's image, this is good and this is right. Something for us to think about and think through, because what happens in Colossians, let's have a look here. Colossians chapter 1, let's go there. Actually, I had all that worked out, didn't I? So we pop that up there and we go there and we go to verse, as you'll already know, to 15. And what do we find? The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. So I'm going to highlight that, and then I'm going to highlight image. I'm going to make that pink so we can see that. So Jesus is the perfect image of God. Now, what we're seeing here is not only is Jesus the image of God in the sense that he lives like God and does things like God, which is significant and primary, but Jesus, he is also true human, isn't he? He's the true image. He's the image of God. He is the true humanity. And true humanity, Jesus never put anything before God. Jesus never worshipped images or used images to worship God or anything like that, did he? He worshipped God in spirit and truth continually as being the image of God. And here we have, in this passage, Jesus being the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. And then, if we just move in the same book of Colossians, let's go to chapter 3, open that up, and scan to chapter 10. What do we have here? Chapter 3, and let's read a little bit of it. Verse 9, do not lie to each other, since you have taken off your old self with its practices, and put on the new self, which is what? Which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its creator. So here we have, I'm going to get that, highlight that again. We have what is happening is that the saved person who is in Christ, is actually beginning to regain and retain, and that's the image was retained, but now it's being regained as we live out in Christ his commandments and the things that he's called us towards. So as we love one another, we are living out that ruling and relationship perfectly as the image of God. We are truly reflecting what God is like in the way that we live. And so the image of God idea is so incredibly powerful. We need to see when it comes, it's coming around now, and making sense in a moment. We need to treat others in the image of, as being people who are image bearers, because this is the key thing that we are to do as Christians. So when somebody comes to us and they have a theory or an idea that are different to us, whatever it might be, we have to ask ourselves, how do I treat this person in the image of God, as God's image bearers? And I say, how do I treat this person in a loving way? How am I going to work that out for this person? Because how am I going to worship God with my body, with myself? This is the right way for worship to happen. I am the image of God. The way I act and behave is promoting that image, and it's the way that worship goes on. I think that's certainly something good for us to keep thinking through and keep talking about. So if I saw a reflection of you in a mirror and I said to you, oh, look at that idiot, you would feel offended, wouldn't you? Because you say, hey, that's my reflection. The same being, as we put down others or laugh at them or whatever it might be, we're actually putting down the image of God, aren't we? That's if I am with you. If I talk about you when you're not there, and I put you down or I laugh at you or whatever, well, God's still there, isn't he? And we are therefore putting him down. We are disparaging his image, and that is something we ought not to do. Do you see how this is a control for us? Image is a control for us when we think of how to respond to others, and in particular, in our particular example, thinking about conspiracy theories. So someone has a conspiracy theory, how are we going to respond to them as people are in the image of God? They can have whatever theory they want, they can have whatever mindset they want, that sort of thing, but we are not to put them down because of that position, because they are humans, they are in God's image, and we dignify the image bearer by listening to them. So, that's really all I want to say. And it's so important. You'll notice that I haven't, or I've tried not to, make any judgment on any particular conspiracy theory. But what I've brought it back to, or have a look at the bigger picture, is how are we to treat others? If I am in discussion with somebody who holds to a conspiracy theory and I don't, I can't just laugh at them and say, you're silly. Because what I'll do is I will just entrench them in that conspiracy theory even more. Other way around, if I am sharing with you, a brother or sister in Christ, or it could be anybody, a conspiracy theory that I hold to, I've got to ask myself, has this conspiracy theory that I hold to, has it got hold of me? Is it controlling me, or am I controlling it? Is this conspiracy theory something that I want to get across to you, and I'm going to do it in such a way as that I'm really not treating you as an image bearer, I'm dismissing you, that sort of... You can see it. It runs both ways, doesn't it? Have you got the conspiracy theory, or has the conspiracy theory got you? That's something we need to be honest with ourselves about, and that's really hard work. Sometimes it means saying, yeah, I was wrong. I was wrong. When we treat others well, God is seen in us. 1 John chapter 4. Let's finish with this verse. 1 John chapter 4 and verse 12. This is one that would be good to listen to, be good to get. Let's just go up here and highlight that and go 1 John 4. And you'll see why I want to bring this up to you. And here we go. 1 John 4 and verse 12. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us. What this is saying is that where we love, we live, we truly live. But more than that, where we love, we show God lives in us. And we're actually showing the world God in our love. And so here we are, image bearers, being the worshippers, showing what he is like, reflecting him in our ruling and our relating and in our loving. Oh, I see Jake Killick's here as well. Hello, my mum and my son. At least I've got some supporters. Great. If they're still watching, who knows? That's all right. You can believe what you want, but you can't treat people however you want. Be open-minded. You might be wrong. I think my dog wants to go outside. Anyway, you might be wrong. So be humble enough to be able to say, I might be mistaken, whether it's on a biblical issue or whether it's on a conspiracy theory issue. This is how we love in this time that's swamped with conspiracy theories. Well, there we go. Thank you. It has been good to be with you today and a little earlier. So those that come a bit later, then... Jake Killick says, hey, Lucy. Hey, Luce. Jake says hello. there we go. It's been good to be with you, and I'm going to say farewell.